Luka Doncic and the Los Angeles Lakers has the entire basketball world talking. And the most surprising part is not what he said. The most surprising part is that more and more people are starting to agree with him. Because not too long ago, Luka Doncic was being treated like the savior of the Lakers franchise. The trade that brought him from Dallas to Los Angeles was supposed to change everything. It was supposed to be the move that finally gave the Lakers their next superstar to build around after the LeBron era began winding down. But now, just over a year into this grand experiment, the questions are getting louder, the doubts are getting bigger, and one of the most influential voices in sports media just came out and said plainly that he does not believe the Lakers will ever win a championship with Luka Doncic leading the way. Cowherd went on his show and laid out his case in a way that was hard to argue with. His comparison was not gentle. He said his comp for Luka has always been Carmelo Anthony, and he said that comparison is getting truer by the day. Now, if you know anything about how that comparison lands in basketball conversations, you know it is one of the most loaded things you can say about a player. Carmelo Anthony was one of the most gifted scorers the league has ever seen. He could fill up a stat sheet on any given night. He was an all-star year after year, and nobody questioned his individual talent. But Carmelo Anthony never won a championship. He never made his team meaningfully better. And despite all those points and all those highlights, the teams he played on never became genuine title contenders with him as the centerpiece. Cowherd is saying he sees that same pattern developing with Luka, and that is a serious thing to say about a player who was just traded for in a blockbuster deal that cost the Lakers Anthony Davis. Cowherd's specific criticisms were pointed and detailed. He said Luka is no longer attacking the rim the way he used to. He said he does not contribute defensively. He said he spends too much time barking at officials and complaining about calls. And then he made a point that really stung. He said if you are an elite defender, you can get away with some complaining because you are bringing something real to the other end of the floor. But if you are refusing to put in effort defensively and then turning around and playing victim to the referees, that combination is something a team cannot build around.
He is not wrong about that. In today's NBA, the teams that consistently compete for championships have players who buy into both ends of the floor. Stars who set the tone on defense make everything easier for everyone around them. Stars who opt out of defense force their teammates to constantly cover for them, and that extra burden quietly destroys team chemistry over time. Cowherd went even further and challenged the Larry Bird comparison that some people have used when talking about Luka. The argument has always been that Luka is a big, skilled, high IQ player who can see the game differently than everyone else, similar to how Bird operated. But Cowherd shot that down quickly. He pointed out that Larry Bird made the all-defensive team 3 times. He said Bird made every single teammate he ever played with better. And then he asked the question that nobody on the Luka bandwagon wants to sit with for too long. A full year into Luka's time with the Lakers, playing alongside LeBron James, one of the smartest basketball players of the last 2 decades, and alongside Austin Reeves, a collaborative and unselfish teammate who makes life easier for everyone around him, and it is still not working. LeBron has admitted it. J.J. Redick has admitted it. Luka himself has admitted it. So how long is this supposed to take before people start asking harder questions? That is the part of Cowherd's argument that hits the hardest. Because the talent level around Luka in Los Angeles is not an excuse. LeBron James makes players better. He has done it his entire career with dozens of different teammates across multiple franchises. Austin Reeves is not a ball hog. He is not demanding the offense run through him. He is a shot creator, a free throw getter, a hard worker who fits alongside almost any star in the league without friction. If Luka cannot make it work with those two players next to him, the problem is not the supporting cast. The problem is something else entirely. And Cowherd is suggesting that the something else is Luka's style of play itself. The ball dominance, the heavy reliance on scoring, the lack of two-way engagement, those things make him incredibly hard to build a championship team around, even when you surround him with quality players. Cowherd also made an interesting comparison to other ball-dominant stars in NBA history. He mentioned Steve Nash and Chris Paul. Both of those players controlled the ball as much as anyone in their eras. Both of them had the ball in their hands on almost every single possession. But the key difference, Cowherd argued, was that Nash and Chris Paul were pass-first players. Their ball dominance served their teammates. It elevated the people around them. Even when LeBron was at the absolute peak of his powers,
Luka's ball dominance is different because it is built around his own scoring. And a player whose primary purpose with the ball is to create shots for himself rather than shots for others creates a ceiling that championship teams have historically been unable to break through. Now here is where this conversation gets really interesting, because the concerns about Luka go beyond just the numbers on the court. They go back to things that have been noticeable for a while now. During the offseason before his first season in Los Angeles, Luka made a very public commitment to getting into better shape. He lost weight. He worked on his conditioning. Men's Health magazine put him on their cover. He looked genuinely different, leaner, more athletic, more prepared for the grind of a full NBA season. And there was real optimism that this was Luka turning a corner, committing to becoming the complete player that everyone believed he could be. But then the season started, and now, looking at where things stand, there are real concerns that he has physically regressed. The conditioning work from the summer does not appear to have carried over. He is not attacking the rim the way a player of his size and skill should be doing. He is settling for jump shots and step-back threes when his physical gifts should allow him to be a constant threat in the paint. That is a pattern that is difficult to explain away. The constant complaining is the other thing that keeps coming up in these conversations. And this is not a minor stylistic quirk. It sets a tone for an entire team. When the best player on the roster is visibly frustrated, arguing with officials, reacting to every call that does not go his way, it sends a message to every other player watching. It tells them that the standard in this environment is to look outward when things go wrong, instead of looking inward. It tells them that blaming circumstances is acceptable. It creates an energy on the court and on the bench that drags a team down in moments when they need to be most focused and most composed. LeBron James has played through more adversity in his career than most players can even imagine, and he has done it with a level of composure and focus that raises the standard for everyone around him. When you combine that with a second star who responds to adversity by complaining loudly and publicly, those two energies eventually create a conflict inside the team that is very hard to manage. J.J. Redick's role in all of this is also worth examining, because part of the criticism is that Redick has been either unwilling or unable to sit Luka down and have the direct, honest conversation that a head coach needs to have with his franchise player. The kind of conversation that says, stop the complaining, get back on defense, lead by example for your teammates. Redick has shown in other areas of his coaching that he is not afraid to say uncomfortable things publicly. He called out the offensive dysfunction on this team after LeBron returned from injury without flinching. He has been one of the more honest coaches in the league when it comes to identifying problems out loud. But when it comes to Luka specifically, there appears to be a hesitation, and that hesitation matters because players take their cues from what the coach tolerates. If Luka can complain on every possession, avoid defensive assignments, and not be held accountable for it, then the message to everyone else in that locker room is that those standards do not apply equally to everyone. And teams that operate with unequal standards rarely become champions. Dallas did not want to trade Luka for no reason. That is something worth sitting with, honestly. The Mavericks had built their entire franchise around this man for years. They had made the NBA Finals with him leading the way. He was the face of everything they were doing. And yet, the organization reached a point where they decided that moving on was the better path forward. Teams do not make that decision lightly. They do not trade a generational talent because things are going perfectly. Something was not working in Dallas, and whatever that something was, it came with Luka to Los Angeles when the trade happened. You do not get the good without the complicated.
And right now, the complicated parts of Luka Doncic are showing up in ways that are impossible to ignore. The comparison to Carmelo Anthony keeps coming back because it is so historically instructive. Carmelo was on teams with real talent around him throughout his career. He was on Olympic teams where he was surrounded by the best players in the world, and he thrived in that context. But in the regular NBA season, on teams built specifically to win championships, the results never matched the individual brilliance. The ball needed to be in Carmelo's hands too often for the offense to function. Teammates had to operate within a structure that ultimately served Carmelo's scoring above everything else. And because winning at the highest level requires sacrifice, requires stars who are willing to take fewer shots in big moments for the good of the team, Carmelo's style made true title contention almost impossible to sustain. Cowherd is saying he sees that same architecture in Luka's game, and 1 year into the Los Angeles experiment, the evidence to support that concern is building rather than fading. Now let us talk about the bigger picture here, because this is not just a debate about one player's style of play. This is a conversation about the direction of the entire Lakers franchise going forward. The new ownership group, led by Mark Walter, is operating with a different mindset than what the Lakers have had in recent years. They are looking at this franchise from a business and competitive standpoint with fresh eyes. And if they look at the evidence from this first year with Luka and conclude that he is not the cornerstone they need to build a championship organization around, they will explore alternatives. That is how front offices in professional sports work at the highest level. No trade is truly permanent. No star player is truly untouchable if the right opportunity presents itself and the organization decides the trajectory needs to change. The conversation about who might be better suited to lead the Lakers has already started. Anthony Edwards is the name that comes up immediately, and honestly, it makes complete sense why. Edwards is 23 years old and plays the game with a level of competitive intensity that reminds people of players from a different era. He wants to defend. He wants to attack. He wants to be the guy who decides close games at both ends of the floor. He has the physical tools and the mental makeup that championship organizations look for in a franchise cornerstone. He is not just a scorer, he is a two-way threat who makes games harder for the opponent at every single moment he is on the court. The comparison to Luka is stark in that specific area. One player makes the game difficult for you on both ends. The other player makes the game very difficult for you on one end and provides almost no resistance on the other. Giannis Antetokounmpo gets mentioned in these conversations too, and the argument for Giannis is straightforward. He can put up 30 points and 12 rebounds on any given night. He defends at an elite level, and he makes his teammates better by forcing defenses to account for him at all times. His offensive limitations from the perimeter are real and well documented, but his physical dominance near the basket and his defensive impact are things that championship teams desperately need. The question with Giannis is whether the Lakers could realistically acquire him and what it would cost to do so. These are long-term conversations that organizations have behind closed doors when they are evaluating whether their current path is actually leading where they want to go. Cade Cunningham is another name that gets floated. Young, smart, developing into one of the better lead guards in the league. Jaylen Brown's name comes up too, though the argument against Brown as a true franchise alpha is that while he is having a genuinely remarkable season, averaging close to 30 points per game and carrying a depleted Celtics roster, it is not fully clear yet whether he is the kind of player who can lead a team all the way through to a championship as the undisputed #1 option. He might be exactly that player, but the verdict is still being written in real time. What all of these conversations have in common is a recognition that the Lakers, after making an enormous investment in Luka Doncic, are not yet seeing the returns they hoped for. A year in, playing with LeBron James and Austin Reeves, the offense is still inconsistent, the defense is still a problem, and the team has not separated itself from the rest of the Western Conference as a genuine championship favorite. That is not where they expected to be when this trade was made. The expectations were much higher. The excitement was much greater, and the gap between those expectations and the current reality is where all of these doubts are being born. To be completely fair to Luka, 1 year is not a long time to evaluate a massive change like this. He moved to a new city, a new organization, a new system, a new set of teammates and coaches, and he did all of it while also trying to maintain his individual performance at an elite level. Those adjustments take time. Players who have spent years in one organization develop habits and rhythms that do not disappear overnight just because they put on a different uniform. And Luka has had moments this season where his brilliance was undeniable, where his vision and his ability to dissect defenses reminded everyone why the Lakers made this trade in the first place. Those moments are real. They are not being ignored. But the question is not whether Luka is talented. Nobody is questioning that. The question is whether his particular combination of strengths and weaknesses, his specific style of play, his ball dominance, his defensive disengagement, his emotional volatility on the court can actually translate into a championship in this league at this moment in time. Cowherd's argument is that the answer is no, that the Lakers have traded for a player who will put up impressive numbers, generate highlight plays, and keep them competitive, but will ultimately fall short when it matters most because of the fundamental way he approaches the game on a nightly basis. That is a heavy verdict to deliver on a 26-year-old player who has barely been in Los Angeles for a full year. But the urgency of the Lakers' situation makes patience a complicated thing to justify. LeBron James is 41 years old. Every single season that passes without a championship is a season that cannot be recovered. The window that exists right now, with LeBron still on the court at this level, is closing whether anyone wants to acknowledge it or not. And if Luka Doncic is the reason that window closes without a ring, the Lakers will look back at this chapter of their history and feel the weight of that missed opportunity for a very long time. The mental toughness question is ultimately the one that sits at the center of everything. Champions are not just built from skill, they are built from the ability to stay locked in when the game is hard, to stay composed when calls are not going your way, to keep competing defensively even when the offense is not flowing, to lead by example in the moments when leadership is most difficult to find. Right now, Luka Doncic is not consistently showing those qualities, and until he does, the doubts that Colin Cowherd voiced publicly and that many other people have been quietly carrying for months are not going to go away no matter how many points he scores or how many assists he racks up on a given night. The Lakers made a massive bet on Luka Doncic. That bet can still pay off, but the way things look right now, with the complaints piling up, the defensive effort remaining absent, the conditioning questions resurfacing, and the partnership with LeBron still not clicking the way it should, the honest answer is that the bet is far from settled, and the basketball world is watching very closely to see what comes next.